No, I remember standing because I live in downtown Manhattan, and I had a 6-week-old kid, 9/11, and I had 2 other kids under 4. I think we had like 3 kids in 4 years, so it was kind of crazy.
Oh my God, that is.
And we're sitting there, and
you're here to tell the tale.
Yes. It's not over yet. I'll tell you, they're like 17 to 21.
That's right. Last you were on, they were all feeding into the college machine. And go ahead. Yeah, so it's definitely the story's not over. But I remember going out there, and I'd seen that my brother called me and said, "Oh, this plane hit the World Trade Center." I turned on the news, and I went outside. I looked down Mercer Street, and I could see the buildings, and you could see right away that. I didn't think they were going to fall, but you could see that I thought the top was going to fall off, and it was totally torqued. And we're watching it, and this woman behind me starts going, "Fuck those motherfucking Arabs! Fuck those! We have to kill them all! We need to cut!" And I just screaming at the top of her lungs, and I was just like, "Oh boy, we're in for a ride." I knew right at that moment that where this was going to be horrific, and turned out to be. Yeah, it just reminds me. The people's short-term memory, and the film last night. That was one thing that reminded me of how people just. I mean, they said it. That people were. I'm referring now to the Filipino people, but that they're forgiving. But I just think it's more about. I don't know what it is.
They're forgetting?
They're more forgetting than forgiving or something, because the level of abuse of power and corruption, I don't know how people still love this woman, Imelda Marcos. It's just amazing.
Well, I think, it's also, I think so many countries are weirdly, they're weirdly aspirational. It's kind of like, why do certain churches, mega churches, give all their pastor all this money, and something about seeing their pastor in the mega mansion and the private jet, and it allows them to own a piece of it. So I think it's very. I don't think
by
it's
proxy, by osmosis.
Yes. And the other thing I really think about, and I always say it about Americans, but I really think it's kind of a universal thing, is this idea that humans in general are only interested in effect. They can only process effect. They're really bad at understanding cause and dealing with cause. So they're always like, okay, this outcome, let's deal with it. But the cause is building, and it's so clearly that it's building now in this new generation, and they're almost willfully blind to it when.
So, I guess somewhere in there is the explanation of how all these folks that are part of the Trump base don't mind that the tax cuts didn't affect them in any positive way, just the really wealthy people. So it boggles my mind. I can never quite wrap my mind around it, I guess. I'm not that sophisticated a thinker.
The reason why the death tax is so popular, we're just what is it now, $5 million? What fraction of what percent actually has a $5 million estate? But every American is that could be me, and I don't want to get the mandate. I think there's a real idea, and it's I remember when the New York Lottery ran this ad on the subway system. I always loved. It was there's someone who won the lottery. I got my American dream at New York Lotto, and it was so that's the American dream. The American dream is buying a lottery ticket. I thought the American dream was working hard, and but it's so funny. But I think that is
and building something from nothing. Well, I guess there is an aspect of something from nothing.
But I think it's this idea that it could happen, that American idea that I can be here and I can be at the lowest point, and at some point I can be at the high point.
Right. That is aspirational. Mm-hmm. That idea, and that is the American dream in a sense, right? Essentially, isn't it? For those who, live or meet certain criteria. Anyway, I don't know if it fit for everybody. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Last time when we sat down, you were just, I think, obviously you were in the earlier stages of the Whiteness Project, and we talked a little bit about it, but we didn't talk a lot about it. Mm-hmm. And now here we are on the other end of this, and here you are. Is this one of the first opportunities you've had to come to a festival with it?
No.
I know it's a variation of the.
No, it's actually, it was what you're seeing here is an iteration of an installation I built for Tribeca 2 years ago.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Yeah, so it was originally built for Tribeca, but it was an interactive installation that I built for Tribeca.
I see.
And just to sort of back up a little bit, since we spoke, and I'm trying to remember, do you remember the date? No.
It's easy to find it out. Easy. I could say, hey, Siri.
But the for the last couple of years, and was I working with Columbia when I spoke with you at that point?
You know what I should have done is listen to that episode. It's been a while since I've listened to it.
So anyway, what happened is that after the initial 2 whiteness projects, with the one in Dallas and the one in Buffalo, I ended up partnering with something called the Interdisciplinary Center of Innovative Theory and Empirics, which they used the project to create the first large-scale study of whiteness and white Americans by a major research institution. They're part of Columbia University.
Okay.
And so we spent the last couple of years, let's see, it was
August 11th, 2000.
I guess I was probably just starting working with them around
2 years ago.
Yeah. So we did 3 more cities, but the way it would work, rather than me going to the city and casting it and trying to figure out an idea, they would send a team of sociologists into the city who would map the city, collect data on about 500 people in each city with these detailed qualitative and quantitative questionnaires. Then they would take a representational sample of the city, and then I would do these oral histories with them, about 50 in each city.
How many?
About 50 in each city.
15 or
50? 50, 50.
Okay, makes more sense.
And so that became something that's a Columbia University-based website called Facing Whiteness now that's up, that people, and it's more of an academic research site. I haven't done anything with the media that's external. You can go see the interviews at it. You can download the transcripts. You can all of them live, and you can ask for copies of the data, and all of it was going to live in the Columbia University library system. So that was the thing that I kind of finished that up last year. And what I'm doing here is sort of, Sean Flynn called me about 6 weeks ago and said, we're really interested in sort of doing something on whiteness. We're thinking a lot about race and power here. Can you put something together for the Camden Film Festival story forums? And he said, it doesn't have to be, just take what you have and just string it together, And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I can do. There's always this thing. You're like, oh yeah, no problem. I can just put something together. And then I was thinking I was going to string together the interviews into some sort of order. And of course, as soon as I started doing it, I was like, oh, this doesn't work at all, because one of the things that I think that that you'd be interested in is this idea of the original Whiteness Project's digital pieces. I was really working hard to find a new model of narrative, meaning it's circular. If you remember, you go online, you sort of navigate your way through it. There's no set structure. So you complete the narrative by deciding who you're seeing that you want to follow. And one of the problems of putting it in a linear order is I decide who you're seeing saying what. And so it's much less me saying, okay, this is an idea, and I'm going to try to show you facets of this idea that are based in both the quantitative and qualitative world, and saying, okay, now Whitney Dow is going to put together a conversation for you to listen to based on his experiences with these people. So it became, and you've seen the piece, it was sort of it's the first time I've ever done anything linear after 350 interviews, or whatever I've done, to even attempt to put something together that has some sort of narrative flow and arc.
Yeah, and I was wondering why, unless people have a more nuanced understanding of the intention behind it, this doesn't show it, but it's still, I mean, captivating, and the subjects that are your talking heads, are captivating. They're all these really thoughtful and articulate, young folks. And, you may find some of their ideas kind of repugnant or unfortunate, but you can't deny that they're not thoughtful. They clearly have processed these thoughts of theirs, and they're talking about them in mostly seemingly honest ways. So, that has an impact. But I'm wondering why it was in the context of story forms, because it is linear and it's like watching a documentary or something in that way.
Yeah, I think that one of the things they did is that the companion piece that's there
right across from your screen that yours is playing on.
Yes, so there's two things.
They're supposed to
there's
interact.
Two films.
Okay.
Yeah, and the idea I think that Sean and Scott had when they were putting together was sort of to create some sort of a dialogue.
Yes, I see it. I could see it, and your wife, right? She intentionally put on this?
She couldn't figure it out. She was like, but it started happening. Yeah, she watched America and used the Whiteness Project as a sound, and she said it was suddenly fascinating to listen to these white voices while watching images of blackness created by a black artist.
Jatovia? Was that?
No, that's not Jatovia.
She's doing something different. Okay.
Garrett.
Garrett Bradley.
Garrett Bradley. I'm sorry.
Is it Bradley?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
I have to.
That could
be it. I want to just double check.
But anyway, so for those as this is a podcast, there's a small room. There's two large screens facing each other. One that has the Whiteness Project running on a loop, and one that has Garrett's. We're hoping it's Bradley's America running on the other side. And there's sets of wireless headphones, and there's two channels. You can pick either one to listen to, and most people watch one and then the other. They sort of watch it in order, but that's sort of. And what's interesting about it is that it's sort of two very different representations of race. One is actuality, meaning it's one is actuality, and mine obviously processed through a filmmaker, but the other is a narrative vision of black representation in cinema,
right? And
sort of in dialogue with whiteness and in dialogue with sort of trying to break out of the of sort of the constraints that the white vision puts on black representation. So I really loved the piece. I really loved the America piece, and I thought it was really. But again, I had no idea how they were going to present them, and so I considered this linear piece as much an experiment as anything else.
Yeah, have you heard from people the reactions?
I haven't. I went down. I haven't really talked to anybody about it. I mean, I've heard who's seen it. So you're the first person.
Okay.
So you can tell me, what did you think?
And well, I kind of did. I mean, a little bit.
And so the question I had for you then is that when you say, there's nothing that states an intention, do you feel like it can be misinterpreted, or do you feel like it's open for interpretation by people who are coming to it?
Well, I think you're going to get very profoundly different responses from different people who come from different experiences. That's the beauty of it. So it would be really interesting to have a panel, or a Q&A in response to that. Could be quite intense, actually, because some of the subjects are, they have very racist views, and some of them have racist views and then are thoughtful about that, and maybe a little bit ambivalent about these knee-jerk or instinctual ideas that they grew up with, and then some of them reject them outright. It's the whole spectrum of personalities,
and that's really the idea.
Representative.
That it's trying to sort of hold up a mirror, and I think in general,
it doesn't really, and there's no way is anybody being judged. They're just talking,
and that's really by intention. Is I feel that it's not. I'm really glad that you said that, because one of the things I was concerned about in it is that you place somebody next to somebody else and you process them one way, and I really don't. I have my own opinions. I judge people personally But I don't want. What I say, everybody who comes and does the Whiteness Project, I say, look, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to like it, but I'm going to accurately represent you. I'm going to accurately represent my experience with you and your views, so that it's really important to me that if someone's going to come up and be really honest, that's all I'm asking. I'm really just trying to hold up a mirror.
It's crucial.
Yeah. And I think that what I like to see is that, and what I've heard from a lot of people, is some see themselves, but some see family members, some see different parts. And so it allows people to, by proxy, process some of these really complicated ideas by seeing somebody who reflects somebody they're close to, or even something. And I would even argue that even some of the most reprehensible things that are said, we as white people all hold pieces of that inside of us. I think that you can be anti-racist, you can be for social justice, but that doesn't stop you from having racist thoughts, and it doesn't stop you from, for the same way that you can be, pro Me Too and women. I have 3 daughters. That doesn't stop me from having sexist thoughts. That's
right.
That for any way that, like, I'd like to be, 5 pounds lighter. That doesn't stop me from eating something. But I go to the gym, right? It's like so that's really was sort of the intention of. So I'm glad, but we'll see. I will see. I'm going to be doing a talk with DeJovia on Saturday.
Right.
And so we'll see what I hopefully in that talk, what I really, really always hope is that somebody somewhere has a negative reaction to what I'm doing, so they can put it out in the open. The worst thing is when people are unhappy and they don't speak up, then so it can be aired. So we'll see.
Well, I also think it's really important, especially now more than ever, we should really embrace the opportunity to hear people's thoughts, no matter how, again, I use the word repugnant, and it is in some cases, but it's so important to hear these people out and let them express their feelings in the context of the most harmless, you know what I mean? They're just speaking. And they're not using epithets. They're not using, so it's important to hear them out. Squelching those people, I think, is what is more probably damaging. I think we need to hear them out, and then we need to have a place where, hopefully, people can reason with. I don't think, obviously, your project. I assume that there's no follow up or anything. That you just want their thoughts at that particular moment in time, and then.
Well, no, actually, I was hoping to do a lot more follow-up. The real process, you can imagine this has been a challenge to raise money for. This project has always been, it's been by far the most widely seen, processed,
Sure.
The website still gets, tens of thousands of visits every month. But it's been seen in every country, millions and millions of views. It's been the hardest thing to raise money for I've ever done. It's that, and understandably so. I think that people understand.
Controversial?
It's just,
or it doesn't offer solutions, and maybe that's what they want. I mean,
no. Maybe you're right, but I did have a whole proposal and project with a funder that remained nameless that I went down to that actually put it in. They built an entire engagement and educational program around it.
Right.
But they finally came and said, we just. Our board doesn't want our name on something called the Whiteness Project.
I see. Yeah.
I've tried to look. It used to be called for whites only. So it's now it's for Columbia.
Why don't you use that rationale and try?
Yes. Now at Columbia they changed it to facing whiteness, so it's moving towards prescriptive.
Right.
Whiteness Project is kind of. It's kind of a a squinting modifier.
It's hard to reconcile what that could mean in an abstract way, or without the context of knowing the project itself. And what
it's funny because Stanley Nelson.
And
he was always giving me shit about it. He's like, you're standing behind the work, not in front of it. You need to get out in front of it, and you're not. You're like, he accused me of being a coward. He's like, you got to get out in front of it because you're the only one who's had this experience now. With talking to 350 people about this, you have a deep well of understanding experience, and you're kind of relying on your subjects to try and process it, which it's a sophisticated way to do it, but it's maybe not the cleanest way to communicate things.
What do you think?
Well, I would, I would be very open to doing something where I'm more out front. I'm not like I'd have to really figure out what it would look like and what it would be. Again, when I originally conceived of this thing, I conceived as a linear film with a lot of animation and sort of like, sort of Schoolhouse Rock type animations that sort of explain a lot of these conceptual ideas. I've gone down so many different blind alleys, and again, it's just
It just hasn't occurred to you yet, or you haven't figured this out.
I haven't figured out because I've sort of been going down this road, and I do a lot of other work, and this is kind of because it's not been hugely funded. I funded other ways. I did 130 interviews last year for $20,000, so that I put money that I make doing advertising, money that I make doing commission stuff, and. I teach. I do a lot of things, and this is something. It's been a labor of love. It's not to say I've raised a few $100,000 for it, but in the context of doing 350 interviews and installations and all this stuff, that's over 7 years.
Yeah.
It
starts to.
It's not
look like not as much money.
Yes, it sounds like a lot of money if you're sitting, but it's been to be in towns for 6 weeks as we were in state. It's hugely expensive to do. Yeah,
right, yeah. But it does pale in comparison to sending 4 daughters through college in this country.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't all pick up and move to Canada.
Camden? Well, I think we
Camden?
should.
No, I was thinking a little further north.
I think we should. Well, one thing we should stop just notice is that this is we
are
doing this podcast on a bench looking out over beautiful Camden Harbor.
Yes.
On the most crystal clear, beautiful day.
I didn't notice until just now that you mentioned it. And there's, hi, how are you guys? Some locals walking by who seem completely unfazed. You'd think they were New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. I was at one festival in Columbia, Missouri, so maybe you know which one.
True Falls.
That's correct. I was in a coffee shop or restaurant or something like that at one point, and I actually did something very different. I interviewed some of the locals because that was one of these festivals where it was so populated by community, which is true with many smaller festivals.
Traverse City is another one.
Traverse City, which I just came back from.
Love that festival.
That was a wonderful festival.
I love that festival. Yeah.
It really is great.
Yeah, I always say, what my favorite thing about that, I shouldn't be talking about Camden, I should be talking about another festival, but they have every...
They're not overlapping, and they do very different...
Every one of your screenings, because I've had films there, is sponsored by a different local business. So they're sponsored by the local gym, the pharmacist, the restaurant, and the owner of the business who's chosen to sponsor introduces your film. So you go in, and so the person, might own this...
This is at Travers?
At Travers.
I don't think so. But
that's when I was there. When I was there, I was there.
I don't know if that happens as
5 years ago.
Okay,
and that was the last time I was there was 5 years ago. That was the case. So it
was a very young festival 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's exploded, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like that
because it's not a market.
Well, that's right. Yeah, and also the festival is not as spread out, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some festivals are so spread out, it makes it difficult to make it to things, and then if you don't have a vehicle with you, know. Anyway, but yes, it's a special festival, and I had a wonderful time. I'd love to go back every year if I could, but I don't think that's gonna. Sorry, they invited me this year. They brought me, so which is very, very, very thoughtful. But it turned out that there was a change of, I don't know if you know, but they had a change of staff.
Yeah, so it's not Deb Lake anymore. And
no. So, and the publicist and a couple of his, producers are working with. Yeah. So I didn't see them at all, but they were there apparently. But they all said, let's offer to Adam and bring him out. It was very nice. I said, well, can I do some Q&As, or can I, what can I do? Can I, make coffee? I was willing. Yeah, no, just come and experience the festival. And I did, of course, do a bunch of interviews there. But
what I love about the festival too is it's one of the few festivals where I feel that the narrative and documentary is really integrated. The community, you really mix it up. Where you go to a lot of these festivals, it's like it's town and gown or or Hufflepuff and Slytherin. I'm not sure, but you really in that festival you're so always together.
That's right.
Whether it's swimming in the lake at midnight or it's really a fun.
Yes, they make it fun. It's a fun festival. They do a lot of fun things there. Most of the main venues are pretty close, which I also I really appreciate. How many times have you been to Camden?
This is my first time.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I think you told me that yesterday. Yeah. Maybe you told me that. Really an incredible setting.
It's unbelievable. And the other thing, I
think they could top Lake Michigan, but I may be wrong.
The swimming is not quite as pleasant, though. It's a little chilly. I think the water's probably like 50 degrees compared to like Lake Michigan.
Yeah, which is we were there kind of like at the warmest point.
The warmest point, yeah. So but other than that, it's it's really pretty spectacular. Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing I wanted to say is that I wanted to mention. I think it's interesting. Part of the process of me being at here at Camden is that Sean and Meg from something called the Waterfall Arts Gallery in Belfast, they commissioned me to do a Maine-based whiteness project. So for the last few days, I've been shooting interviews.
Belfast, Maine?
Yes.
Okay.
In Belfast, Maine. So the last few days I've been shooting interviews in Rockland.
Oh, yes, you mentioned that too.
Yeah. So which has been really, really interesting because, it is, I think Maine is somewhere between just over 95% white and just under 95% white. It's the whitest state in the Union. So
it is.
Where else better to do the whiteness project than Maine?
The white state.
The white state. So.
Yeah. So tell me about those subjects that you talked to, since it's so fresh. Are they?
Yeah, it was interesting, and I think that one of the biggest challenges of the project in general, every time we land, is to get a representational sample of people is really tough, because the people who come to it, you have to figure out ways for them to come. So one of the struggles with the project has always been is I tend to get more liberal than conservative people.
Of course.
Yes.
Right.
So. But we got a pretty good range of people. We're trying to turn around in a couple of weeks. So the actual exercise of cutting this other thing has been helpful, because I think we have something, 20 hours of footage now that we're trying to get it up by the end of this month. And that takes, 20 hours footage takes 40 hours to watch before you even start cutting. So,
because what are you doing?
Because you're
analyzing it, obviously.
Yes, you're making notes and everything.
But you're making notes and you're pre-editing.
Making selects and everything.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a similar piece to what's here, but probably a lot longer.
The folks that, for instance, that you were interviewing already, you've interviewed all of them that you're going to in Belfast, Maine.
I interviewed them in Rockland,
Maine.
They're
from Belfast, but you went to Rockland.
But the
right
gallery,
here up the road.
The gallery is in Belfast. That's going to go in.
I see. I stand corrected. But these people that you interviewed this week, they're not shaded by or informed by
the previous iterations.
Other iterations. Have they?
Some
do you
are.
Discourage that?
No, I try and be as transparent as possible, and I say.
I mean, I can see it'd be helpful for people that maybe are nervous about speaking their truth, that they can see that other people have done it and they're not somehow lionized or become pariahs or.
Yeah, I don't. No, I think it's actually I say Google the progress, look at it, and I also have a process where I say don't sign the release till we finish the interview, and even when I was doing the Columbia, I don't have time now. Because of the time frame, but I would do the interview, send them a transcript. I say run a line through anything you don't want me to use. I'm not. You're
not trying to catch.
I'm not trying to catch anybody out.
Right.
I'm not trying to I really want to reflect them accurately, and I want them to feel reflected accurately. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, look. You and I have platforms. We get to say what we want in different ways. I mean, what a gift to be able to talk to the world in the way be able to talk to the world the way I do. And most people don't have that platform. And so eventually it's a platform where they can come, and especially if they're people that don't have, I would say agency in the world, but don't necessarily have that much influence, to sort of have a way to speak. And so I actually feel that the project is not just the media that you see. I really consider the interviews themselves as part of the project and the experience that the people have. And I would say that 22% to 30% of people that I interview have some sort of a transformational experience during the interview. It's very people never talk about this stuff, and it's really a way to talk about something. And at this point, I'm very experienced with eliciting honest comments from people in a way that's, and again, because they don't have to sign the release, it's sort of a low risk way of doing it, and the way it's done with an iDirect. It's done in this very specific way that I do it.
Explain what that is.
I just I have
iDirect.
An iDirect is a box that goes on a tripod that you put the camera in that has 2 mirrors in it that essentially puts my face. It's kind of like an Interatron.
I was thinking about that.
But it's
Errol Morse's convention.
It's an analog Interatron, so that the problem with the Interatron is that your face, you have a camera in your face that puts your face on a teleprompter, so they can look into your eyes. But to look into their eyes, you have to look at the camera lens. And so you're actually not making eye contact. With iDirect, there's a one-way mirror that the camera shoots through and another mirror. So it's actually, you're looking right into their eyes. And you maintain eye contact with them throughout the entire interview. But the viewer feels that they're talking right down the lens of the camera.
Right, because people are accustomed to similar types of interviewees looking off camera.
Yes.
Right.
And the way
or they're looking into the camera, but it's very uncomfortable for people to look into a camera and talk openly.
Yes, so this makes it really, really easy. And the other thing, and I guess a question for you is seeing the thing blown up. One of the issues that I've blown up when I see it blown up is that it was designed originally for a computer, so the framing is designed so it feels like a mirror, like kind of how you see yourself when you're looking at a computer screen. You kind of see yourself sort of chest up. And so that's the way I shoot them, so it actually feels like you're...
How would you shoot it differently if you knew it for a much bigger screen?
I experimented shooting it much wider.
I see.
And so you'd see more body language and more just, comfort. But it's, I'm not sure it's better. I don't know.
None of this occurred to me.
Yeah.
I don't, as far as my own personality goes, I tend to get very sucked into that type of storytelling, that type of interview, and it becomes like an emotional experience immediately, where I want to connect with that person and what they're saying, and so I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel sympathetic, empathetic, whatever, empathetic about very easily. I'm very vulnerable like that, I guess. So I don't really, I almost just don't even think about it from a technical standpoint when I'm watching something like that myself. I mean, filmmaker might. You're the dream audience for a filmmaker then, because the idea is that I do this. I think
my feeling is that if you see the technology, then you're not using the technology right. The idea, like film is an emotional medium.
Yeah.
And
it's the power of the camera.
It's not an informational medium. And so you want people to have emotional connection, whether it's an image of a beautiful harbor or whether it's someone...
A Rachel Maddow.
Yes, yeah.
So you talking about whatever, maybe not. But in the interactive version of this, and people can go to the Whiteness Project online.
WhitenessProject.org, yeah.
At WhitenessProject.org. And so you come to a screen with a bunch of different faces?
It's basically a carousel of faces that you can turn.
Okay.
So it's a circle,
right,
and you can see the faces,
amazing.
and they have a face and
then you can spin it again.
A little quote. You can spin it. You can pick any way you want to go in. So people pick the people that they sort of see themselves in.
By their face? Because
by their
they're
face.
Not, okay.
And that was sort of
another... interesting if you get to if it stops like like a roulette wheel or something. If it stops and then you get the beginning of, as you pass your cursor over it, or at the beginning they're starting to talk.
No. It's just it's a still, and it has a quote over it. So
I see.
The other thing I was really...
I forgot that part of it. As they're speaking, you have... subtitle. I mean, what do you call them? Super titles?
They're called subtitles, but it's animated subtitles. Yeah, along their sides and stuff.
Yeah, it moves from side to side, but you can read everything. Why did you choose to do that? Because that takes your eyes off of the subjects.
The reason I did that is that so that because you have to put on the headphones, not everybody is not necessarily going to come in and make that choice. They can sort of...
Oh, it could be a compelling way to...
You can look at it and see... And the other thing is that it's also for... I have a deaf cousin, and I'm very... The first version of it, I was like, put it out without doing subtitles, and I felt terrible. She was so mad. She was like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, I was like...
Right. Well, it's personal.
Yeah, it's personal. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? So I think that it's important to, to remember that not everybody's watching your stuff can necessarily hear. So,
but usually we have the option of doing that.
Yes, on that, yes. But this was because this particular one was designed for an installation.
As you say, it's animated, so it's not the kind of thing you can disable.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand. Right.
Yeah.
In fact, you don't want to enable subtitles while the animated styles are going. That actually happens because you have, as you know, like if you're watching certain streaming platforms, you can have the subtitles, like a foreign language film, you'd want to do that. But then there's also, for the deaf, they also explain the sounds and other things. So it's a whole different
music.
Sometimes technology that's an option.
Background
score. You can have both playing at the same time, sometimes, if you're not careful. Because sometimes you'll watch something with the subtitles there by default, and then, anyway. Yeah, right. The subtitles don't typically, they may say something like music, but more often than not, they don't talk about like how the wind is or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's great to see you here. We're going to go for a hike tomorrow? Is that the
idea is
in the foothills of the...
Yeah, and the foothill, supposedly that little mountain over there has an incredible view of the harbor.
Oh, great. Oh, of course it would.
Yeah.
Is that a little... Can you see the kite, right? To the left of the kite? That's the top of the
tower.
Mountain.
Yes.
There's a little tower over there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we should go there.
Yeah.
I think I could be talked into doing this.
I think you should definitely. I think it's like,
I just don't... Are you... how far is that?
I bet this woman knows.
Let's ask her.
Excuse me.
Yes.
What's the name of the mountain?
Mount Batty.
And
how
long a hike?
Batty?
And how long a hike is it to the top?
Like 20 minutes.
Oh no, but how long? But you have to drive to the there, right?
No, the trailhead is on Spring Street.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a couple blocks
Spring Street.
away.
Oh.
Probably like 4 blocks.
And it only takes 20 minutes to walk to the top. There. It's a foot.
You look pretty fit. So like, yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, what about some old geezers like us?
We just got dissed. So much for your lobster drinking, crack smoking. I'll be here, Rune.
And that's a World War I memorial at the top.
Oh, really?
I was going to ask, that little tower you mean at the very top?
There's a little spiral staircase.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That might take us 20 minutes alone.
I'm going to have my binoculars going to be watching you from up there, checking out yours. What's your name? Janelle? And the name of your business here is Camden Harbor Cruises, which is open from mid-May to mid-October, 7 days a week for the low price of $29 in New York. Yeah. Can't get lunch for $29 in New York.
There's lunch included?
No. No, I'm trying to make a point about like how you can't get a good lunch in New York City for $29 anymore.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you
have to get the dirty water dog.
Street meat. All right.
Then I guess I know the other thing I wanted to sort of mention to you, just while we're talking.
Thank you, Janelle.
Is that I would say that you asked about a linear film. They actually sort of talk a little about the film I'm working on now, which is about reparations, and I'm making a film with a woman called Erica Alexander, who was in Get Out and Living Single, The Cosby Show, and we're following HB 40, the bill.
Wait, is this a narrative?
No, we're following the trajectory of the reparations bill HB 40 that Sheila Jackson Lee has introduced into Congress, and we've been shooting.
She's a rep.
Yeah, she's a rep.
And so she is trying to put this through currently.
Yes,
in this current
Congress.
The Congress isn't so much the problem as the
Senate. Well, Cory Booker is going to sponsor in the Senate.
Oh, great.
But the issue is that this is actually a bill that Senator Conyers introduced in 1989 for the first time, and he's introduced it every year until he retired. Never got out of committee, and the bill is to form a committee to discuss reparations and appropriate remedies.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bill to have a discussion that they can't get a vote on. It's not a bill for reparations. It's a bill to have a discussion about reparations.
I see.
And so
it's a vehicle.
So when he retired, Sheila Jackson Lee took it over, and she's trying to get it.
What's her district?
She's in Texas, and I'm not sure that's as far as I go.
Yeah.
So I've shot. Right now, actually, Eric was shooting down there yesterday with with her
Erica Alexander.
Erica Alexander,
who is an actress, an actor rather, but is
she's an actor and
a justice warrior.
A justice warrior. she's
an activist.
She's an activist.
Okay.
And an actress, and she's she's an incredibly powerful person that I've met. So I'll talk to you more about it once as we move down the pike. So
that'd be great, and maybe we can do something with you and Erica. Then.
Yeah, no, you would love her. She's amazing. And so I'd love to do that.
Well, that's interesting in respect to the Whiteness Project to then do a project about reparations.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because I was interested in doing a project on reparations. I've been really interested in the financial story. Not like I always say like the financial leads to the moral, and if you start at the moral, it becomes some sort of an indictment as opposed to taking that out of it. If you just look at the full, straight up financial ramifications of slavery, how it's embedded in everything, who it's benefited, who it hasn't benefited.
Right.
It's much, much easier to understand than say, it's a terrible thing. Well, how do you quantify that? Well, you can quantify financial transactions. And and there's an incredible book out that I recommend anybody who's remotely interested in reading called The Half Has Never Been Told by Edward Baptist, that sort of links slave narratives to economic developments in the country and how sort of, slavery was really and the cotton trade was the economic powerhouse that really put us on the map and drove the Louisiana Purchase, drove so many things that bank instruments, all kinds of things that makes who we are today.
Say on the backs of slaves,
on the backs of
African Americans, and then at least we built the railroad ourselves. We can take credit for that at least. Wow. If let's say I know the unlikelihood of a bill in this day and age of right now that somehow passing through the Senate and all the necessary steps. However, let's say in the abstract and hypothetical it did. So what happens? Do people apply, or do they?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
It is. Like how reparations get.
Well, that's what the bill says is. To actually ask that question, is this something that is viable? How would it be adjudicated? I think that what happens very quickly is people say, oh, well, it's impossible. You can't write everybody checks. Well, nobody's even saying that at this point. People are just saying that this is an uncompleted part of our history. This is... Everybody would say that, it's the original sin, or however they put it, and it's something that hasn't been resolved, really. We've never had any kind of reconciliation. So what does that look like? I mean...
Here's an idea.
Yeah.
For instance, what you could do with that money. You could pay off, or try to pay off, all the inner city liquor store owners to shut down their liquor stores and come up with rehab centers or facilities to help alcoholics. There's an idea.
Well, I think that one of the model. I mean, if I look at some of this interesting model is like the tobacco settlement that created Truth.com, where they essentially had to fund. They had to fund the destruction of their own business, right? They had to that whole however many $1 billion fund that was created, where they created all kinds of ad campaigns about how dangerous tobacco was. And I think part of what I think when you talk to a lot of African Americans, one of their issue is like this story has never been told accurately. That what we're forced to endure is this false history being taught in the schools. And it was an interesting settlement. There was a police brutality case in Chicago, and I should know exactly what it is, but I don't. But part of the settlement was that they had to put curriculum in the school system about the relationship between police and the black community and the history of police brutality in Chicago, which has been legion. So I think part of it is to say really tell the story accurately. I think the challenge of that is that you even see there was an interesting article in the Times just the other day about how as plantations, places like Monticello start telling the story more completely, saying that it's not a simple, happy story. It's a complicated story, as all stories are, that the pushback they're getting from the visitors is like, I came to hear about Jefferson. Why are you talking about slavery? And so I think that, just saying we're going to tell the history accurately is a complicated.
It is a complicated. It's a jagged pill. Well, and it's interesting because people want myth.
Yes,
so they're starved for mythology.
Well, I think that one of the problems is that Sorry, go ahead.
No.
That whiteness is connected to American exceptionalism, and American exceptionalism is connected to this myth of the independent actor. And no one is an independent actor, right?
Yeah.
So I think by challenging white supremacy, you're talking about reparations, you're actually challenging, American exceptionalism, which is, well, then you're asking us to come up with a new story about ourselves as white people. And that's a bigger challenge than to say you have to pay for something. To say you have to reimagine your place in the world and understand your righteous narrative in a different way is even more challenging.
Well, we underestimate our young citizens because there's some very young people in your Whiteness Project who are pretty brave, or not so much brave as I don't think they'd consider themselves brave. I think just less afraid of the truth, of saying the truth about being white and our legacy of what we've done in this country, as well as around the planet. And it doesn't mean everybody has to apologize or feel shame. It's just dealing with truth is a liberating thing, I think. I don't know. You can't be free without the truth. I just feel that's my feeling.
Well, you've seen the reaction to the 1619 Project. It's like some people did backflips over it because that's so. I think you're right. Is that someone who's my age, 57. The world I grew up in is so vastly different. Just the language. Like when I grew up, there was no language to discuss race. When I started this project, there was no. I started shooting probably 7-8 years ago. The conversations we're having then are so fundamentally different that we're having now, and that just the same way when I was young, this like gay marriage wasn't even considered a possibility. Now, when I go to same-sex marriages, my kids aren't like, "Oh, this is incredible." They're like,
"Right,
Dad, your friends are so boring. Do we have to stay?" Like that's like they're not even processing it as something different. When I grew up, gay culture was subculture. Now, gay culture is culture.
Right. Yeah. What's exciting about checking in with filmmakers like you is witnessing the journey you're on also. And we started rather late, like only a couple years ago, documenting. But it's one of the benefits of this and bringing people back on is to see their journey, as storytellers and artists and as human beings, Yeah. So it's wild to see where you're heading, I look forward to...
Thank you. If I knew where I was heading, I'm looking forward to knowing where. Yes.
Well, that's the whole thing. You're also on the same sort
path.
Of, you don't know where this next thing what opportunities will come, or what may come of it as a So, well done.
Well, I appreciate it.
You have a stack of scripts on your desk,
yes,
and you're just trying to get through them all methodically. It's a different journey for you.
Yes, but the thing is, as it's also like what the you're also faced with a market like what. What's the next film you're going to make? Well, I have 10 films I'd like to make. The next one I make is the one that gets funded. That's like the reality of it.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it's always really great talking to you, Adam. I really, it's like I appreciate what you do. I like talking to you. I like listening to you talk to other people. So it's like, yeah.
Thank you.